The Paleolithic diet is also referred to as the caveman diet, Stone Age diet, and hunter-gatherer diet. It consists of foods that are assumed to have been available to humans prior to the establishment of agriculture. This began 2.5 million years ago when humans first started using stone tools and ended around 10,000 years ago when agriculture emerged. It is defined by Nursing Central's Taber's Medical Dictionary as a diet modeled on the food choices of modern hunter-gatherer societies or primitive human cultures. It includes nuts, fruits, vegetables, wild game, and fish, and typically derives about 21% of its calories from fats. This diet excludes grains, legumes, dairy products, salt, refined sugar, and processed oils, all of which were unavailable before humans began cultivating plants and domesticating animals. The purpose of the paleo diet is to return to a way of eating that's more like what early humans ate. The reasoning is that the human body is genetically mismatched to the modern diet that emerged when farming practices began. Farming changed what people ate and established dairy, grains, and legumes as additional staples in the human diet. This mismatch is believed to be a contributing factor to the prevalence of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease today. In 2013, an estimated 1 to 3 million Americans, or 1% of Americans, were paleo. It is believed that the diet will continue to stay popular, but it will not go mainstream.
Though there are many books published on the paleo diet, there still are misconceptions that follow this diet. Most of these misconceptions arise simply because there is not enough scientific evidence to suggest whether the paleo diet is actually healthy. Many proponents of the paleo diet claim that the paleo diet is what people were designed to eat, or that it represents what all humans should eat. According to Zach S. Conrad, nature determined what our bodies needed thousands of years before civilization developed. The claim is that people should be following the paleo diet because it is what nature intended. To dispute this claim, Tufts University explains that this is not necessarily true, and it's all thanks to evolution. According to Tufts University, the initial transition from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to an agricultural lifestyle was initially challenging for people. When people first began eating grains, they were not getting all of the nutrients they needed, but this was because they were not used to this type of diet. Over time, though, people's diets began to diversify, along with advances in the agricultural and food industry. Tufts University also claims that because of this, a person following the paleo diet in the modern era may be missing out on important nutrients. These nutrients, which are recommended by nutrition experts, include whole grains, legumes, and dairy. Because humans' diets have evolved, so should people's diets today. Another misconception about the paleo diet is that it follows exactly what our ancestors ate. According to Tufts University, our ancestors were opportunistic eaters. Simply put, they ate whatever they could find, scavenge, or hunt. Today, when a person wants something to eat, they go to a store or to a restaurant. This is a luxury our prehistoric ancestors could not afford. Zach Conrad agrees to this idea, stating that the new paleo diet is not really the way people ate in the Paleolithic era. In fact, he claims early Homo sapiens of this era had not yet harnessed the power of fire. So most people of this era most likely ate whatever they could find. They often would kill an animal and consume all that they could, but after that, they may not eat for weeks. Another issue arising from the claim that the Paleolithic diet follows exactly the diets of Paleolithic people is that the diets of these populations varied greatly by their geographic location. Therefore, there was not a standard diet that all Paleolithic populations followed. Rather, they ate what was available. So even though the modern paleo diet claims to be eating exactly what our ancestors were eating, this is probably not true. Though there are many more, the last misconception discussed is the misconception that the paleo diet decreases the risk for chronic diseases. The main response to this by most scholars is that there simply is not enough scientific evidence or research on the paleo diet and its effects to draw this conclusion. It's impossible to draw the conclusion from researching our ancestors as well, because they simply did not live long enough. So, in essence, they may have had less chronic diseases during the Paleolithic era, but most people were not living long enough to acquire the chronic illnesses that often come with age. In fact, according to Stanley M. Garn and William L. Leonard, people of the Paleolithic era on average lived to about 30. Therefore, it's impossible to say that our ancestors lived a healthier lifestyle, because they simply were not reaching ages in which chronic disease symptoms were showing. Therefore, with this information and the lack of scientific evidence, conclusions on whether or not the paleo diet reduces chronic diseases cannot be drawn.
It seems like there's always a new fad to jump on and some miracle diet to follow. The Paleolithic diet has been in the gastronomical spotlight for many years, with more and more people testing it out. For some people, it makes them feel great, but sometimes those people can speak so highly of paleo that it misleads others. Because of these exaggerated claims, the diet has been under intense scrutiny by health professionals, and the claims have since received harsh criticism. One major proponent of the paleo diet is Pete Evans, an Australian chef, television personality, and author of numerous healthy eating cookbooks. He has over 455,000 fans on his Facebook page alone. Pete Evans claimed publicly that following the paleo diet holds the cure to a hormonal condition called polycystic ovary syndrome. He also suggested on television that following the Australian National Dietary Guidelines instead of his favored paleo diet has caused rising rates of autism, mental illness, obesity, and even dementia in Australia. In actuality, the World Health Organization states that a low-carb, high-protein diet, such as paleo, can lead to poor brain function, constipation, which can lead to bowel cancer, and eating lots of meat like you do in paleo can lead to cancer and heart disease. The president of the Australian Medical Association Victorian, Dr. Tony Bartone, accurately stated, "While everyone is entitled to their own views, rightly or wrongly, celebrities' comments and actions hold extra weight in society. It's important to recognize that just because the paleo diet works for an attractive and vocal celebrity, it still might not be right for you." The biggest issue with the Paleolithic diet is its lack of evidence. The diet may have been what our ancestors consumed, but that does not necessarily mean that they had the most beneficial diet, especially when considering their resources or lack thereof. According to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, parts of the paleo diet are proven to be beneficial, like increasing the consumption of vegetables and decreasing processed foods that contain few nutrients. The paleo-prohibited foods, like dairy, legumes, and grains, even whole grains, leave health professionals and the general public confused. The journal goes on to say that dairy is an excellent source of calcium, protein, and phosphorus. Legumes have lots of protein, fiber, and nutrients, and grains are a major staple food for most populations. There hasn't yet been concrete evidence proving whether or not eliminating them actually promotes health. Paleo provides a list of allowed foods and not allowed foods, and while that may be very orderly, it can be problematic for some people. Strictly following the diet rules often causes paleo subscribers to focus more on these rules and less on how it is actually making them feel.
There are many ways in which the Paleolithic diet has implication for nurses and all other healthcare professionals. It is important to take a holistic view when providing care to patients. This includes a patient's diet. A patient who follows a strict paleo diet may refuse to eat certain items while in the hospital, similar to a patient who denies certain foods for religious or cultural reasons. Because a patient may refuse to eat certain food, healthcare professionals are responsible for finding a compromise and providing food they are willing to eat. Nurses need to be aware of what their patients can and will eat and plan accordingly. This may also mean that the hospital itself or kitchen staff must be able to provide food items for a diverse group of eating preferences. Because nurses may not be familiar with the paleo diet, gaining necessary information is very important to provide care for a patient following the diet. Nurses need to know what the paleo diet is and the foods that are included in the diet. If they are unaware of the restrictions of this diet, they should seek information from a credible source. The paleo diet is unique to each person. Though two people may claim they are on the same paleo diet, they may not necessarily eat the same things. Therefore, asking a patient their preferences is probably the best way to learn about the food they eat. Overall, the paleo diet varies among its users, so nurses should not assume the food that they will eat. Patients may have questions regarding the paleo diet that the nurse may not know. Therefore, it might be in the best interest to become more informed on this diet. A nurse can then provide information to patients who may be on the diet or who want to know more about it. Nurses must have the knowledge to provide education to their patients. It's important for nurses to be able to educate their patients on some of the effects of this diet. For example, someone on the paleo diet may only eat meat and berries. A possible side effect of this person's diet is that they may have low levels of calcium. In this case, the nurse must explain that their diet is contributing to their low levels of calcium. They can then work together to devise a plan that incorporates more calcium-rich foods while also following their dietary preferences. Last but not least, nurses and all healthcare professionals should approach this diet with open-mindedness. Chances are the nurse may have differing views than the patient. They may even disagree with the diet and its effects. It's important to treat patients' views with open-mindedness and sensitivity, just as you would with a patient that has different religious beliefs than you.
When working with patients, it is highly likely that there will be many situations in which they will ask questions pertaining to dieting. As the paleo diet has become a fad and quite the common topic, it is also likely that patients may ask about the diet specifically. As a health professional, I find it very important to stay on top of common fads. By knowing what the paleo diet is, I can inform my patients on the best diet solution they should use. As discussed earlier, the paleo diet can be helpful for some, but is not advised for everyone. I would inform the patient on how the paleo diet does lead to weight loss in certain circumstances, yet, though, it can be difficult to maintain the amount of protein and avoid grains and dairy. Dieting is more about making the right food decisions and controlling portions. In research done on this topic, there have been many clinical trials. Starting in 2007, studies have been done comparing the Paleolithic diet and other diets. In most all trials, the patients have all lost weight, yet there has not been statistical significance between the weight loss in the paleo diet versus a different diet. In a trial done in 2008 by Osterdahl et al., 14 healthy volunteers were used, and there was a mean weight loss of 2.3 kilograms, and their systolic blood pressure improved, but their calcium levels were significantly lacking. Another trial done in 2013 by Johnson et al. Had 13 diabetic volunteers that followed the Paleolithic diet. It proved to create more energy, yet the volunteers noted that it was very difficult to adhere to. A trial done over a 2-year span in 2014 by Melberg et al. Had 70 women that were obese and postmenopausal. After the 2 years, the women that had been on the Paleolithic diet had lost more body fat, but they also lost lean tissue. The last trial I looked at used 24 healthy males and tested their glucose and insulin levels while eating Paleolithic meals. There was no significance in the data they found. With this information, as a healthcare professional, I can look at the past information and data taken, continue to do more research, and also aid in the process of another trial. While educating patients, I would include the research that I have done. I would include the trials that I have looked at and how different diets affect different people in different ways. I would make a pamphlet on what exactly the Paleolithic diet is and what it does on a cellular level and how the weight loss occurs. I would also include information on other diets. A note that I would make for my patients would be the importance of using reliable resources. I can share research data with patients and I can tell them where I got my research, and I can lead them to use sources that are peer-reviewed from reliable sources.